The whisper beneath the stars had never looked so heavy. He stood at the edge of the docking bay, arms crossed, a wrench still in hand. His jumpsuit was stained with coolant, dirt, and soot from the day's repairs, but he didn't care. He couldn't care. Not when she stood there, just beyond the yellow caution line, looking at him like she had something to say and wasn't sure how. She wasn't human, not really. Her skin shimmered like dusk on water, blue and silver, her eyes like drops of glowing quartz. Thin lines of delicate tattoos danced across her cheeks, the marks of her kind, marks that humans still didn't fully understand. She was young. Far too young by galactic standards. Maybe 17 in human years, barely into maturity by the laws of her people. But her voice carried the weight of something ancient when she finally spoke. "I'm old enough." "Human," she whispered. He blinked, caught off guard by the tremble in her voice, the tears she refused to let fall. She looked away quickly, clutching the satchel on her shoulder tighter, her slender fingers trembling. The air between them grew still, heavy with meaning he wasn't ready to grasp. Ships hummed in the background, drones buzzed overhead, and a group of aliens argued in the far corner of the bay over cargo rates. The galaxy moved on, but here, in this quiet corner, something shifted. His name was Jace Rowan. Just a mechanic. Just a human. No military record, no medals, no legacy, unless you counted fixing freighter toilets as a legacy. He didn't understand why she'd come to him. Why she always stood near his workstation when she was off duty. Why she watched him, listened to him ramble about human food, old Earth music, or the stars humans once dreamed of reaching. Yet something about her always stayed in his thoughts. "You're not ready," he said gently, trying not to sound cruel. "Not yet." Her lips quivered, and for the first time he saw something more than youth. It wasn't desire. It wasn't romance. It was belief in him. Belief that he was something more than the grease-stained worker barely holding together an aging ship. She turned before he could say another word. Without a goodbye, without a final glance, she stepped onto the boarding ramp of a diplomatic vessel. And just like that she was gone. They said she was chosen. Selected by her people to join the Royal Academy on the Crystal Moons, an honor beyond belief. Most of the crew celebrated her destiny. They toasted her name that night. But Jace couldn't drink. Not because of what she said, but because of what he felt. Because when she looked at him, he felt seen. Not as a human. Not as a worker. Not even as a man, but as something important. He didn't know why. He didn't know how. But deep down, something told him she would return. And when she did, nothing would be the same. The shadow of her name. 5 years passed. 5 quiet years. And she didn't come back. Jace Rowan worked in the lower decks of the trade ship Emberlight, a rusted cargo freighter that drifted between forgotten colonies and outer rim ports. The world hadn't changed much, not from his view. The engines still overheated when they shouldn't. The grav system still flickered during jumps. And the crew still argued over whose turn it was to clean the recycling unit. But inside Jace, everything had changed. Some nights, he'd sit alone in the underdeck corridor, eating cold stew from a dented metal bowl, listening to old Earth songs. On his cracked headset, he'd glance at the empty wall beside him, remembering how she once leaned there, curious about his music. She hadn't even liked it, said the instruments were chaotic. But she stayed. She listened anyway. And she always smiled at the lyrics, even when she didn't understand them. Her name was Sarai. Just Sarai. He didn't even know if that was her full name, or if aliens like her even had surnames. She never explained. She just said it once, like, it was enough. But now, her name followed him, because something strange had begun to happen. At first, it was whispers. Strange ones, from traders in the galactic markets. from smugglers with too many secrets, even from a few ex-military officers who passed through the Emberlight for minor repairs. You ever hear of the Silver Air? One asked Jace over a broken GRV-stabilizer.jace. He frowned. No, why? Some say she walks with the Royal Guards now. Others say she vanished into the outer moons, turned rogue. Half the court wants her erased. The other half? They fear she's building something. Jace didn't answer. He couldn't, because he knew who they were talking about. And it made his hands shake. 1 week later, the Emberlight took a contract to deliver fuel cells to the planet. Threxus, a cold, wind-lashed world with twin suns that never warmed its surface. Jace hated Threxus. The air always tasted of iron, and the sky never looked real. As he stepped onto the loading ramp, a merchant brushed past him in a hurry. His hood fell slightly, revealing pointed ears and etched markings that glowed faintly under the pale light. A noble-born alien, high class. But that wasn't what froze Jace. It was the pendant the merchant wore, an etched silver disc with a swirling symbol in its center. The same one Sarai used to draw in the margins of his repair logs, laughing as he scolded her for wasting paper. He stared. The merchant noticed and paused. Where did you get that? Jace asked, voice tight. It's none of your concern, human. The alien replied coldly, but if you must know, it came from her, the Silver Air, the one who chose the human and vanished. Jace felt like the stars had dropped from the sky into his chest. She's alive? He asked quietly. The merchant didn't reply, just turned and walked into the snow, disappearing like a shadow. That night, Jace couldn't sleep, not because of what the alien had said, but because of what it meant. She hadn't forgotten him. Had given that pendant to someone. And now her name was being whispered across systems. What was she doing? Why now? The next morning, a new message blinked on the Emberlight's communication screen. Unregistered sender. Encrypted line.jace opened it. Only one sentence appeared, glowing in blue text. Do you still fix what others break? His heart stopped. It wasn't signed. It wasn't dated. But he knew. She was coming back. The storm before her voiced crew of the Emberlight thought it was just another supply. Run.jace didn't. Ever since the message arrived, his chest felt tight like a wire pulled too hard inside him, waiting to snap. The message played again, and again in his mind. Do you still fix what others break? Those words weren't just about engines. They were about him, her. Everything. But he didn't tell the captain. Didn't tell the crew. They wouldn't understand. Most of them had never even seen Sarai. And those who had? They barely remembered her. To them, she was just another alien with glowing tattoos and curious eyes. But to Jace, she was the moment everything changed. 3 days into the journey, the Emberlight passed through a narrow corridor of fractured space called the Seethe. It was known for its strange gravity shifts and sensor ghosts. Most captains avoided it. But this shortcut saved 2 days, and the captain liked risk more than reason. That was when things started to go wrong. First, the navigation screen blinked out for 2 minutes. Then, every transmission they sent out came back scrambled, twisted. Almost like someone was listening, but never responding. The worst part? The stars didn't look right anymore. They flickered like dying eyes, and the void felt closer somehow. Jace was in the engine room when it hit. A pulse, loud like thunder beneath his skin. No explosion, no alarm, just a single vibration that rattled the metal around him, made the lights dim, and left every system in the ship humming low, like it was alive and waiting. What the hell was that? Someone shouted on the but Jace wasn't listening anymore because the main console lit up on its own, and a symbol appeared spinning slowly, a silver swirl etched into black. Her mark. He reached out, his fingers trembling. As soon as he touched the screen, the room went silent. Completely. No humming. No clicks. No voices on COMS. Just one sound. A voice. Soft. Familiar. Carried through the console like a memory. You were the only one who never lied to me, Jace. He whispered her name. Sarai. I know what you're thinking, the voice continued, but I can't return yet. Not fully. They would track me. Hurt you. Hurt others. So I need you to come first. Come where? Jace asked the empty air dot, but there was no reply. Only a set of coordinates, blinking, fixed on a forbidden moon. Its name was VELTREN dot, and it didn't exist on any current star maps. Not anymore. JACE tried to reach the captain. The comms were still down. The ship was floating normally again, like nothing had happened, but something had changed. Deeply, permanently. Ship felt like it had passed through a ghost's breath, and now something ancient followed them. Later. That night, Jay sat by the viewing panel, staring into space, holding the coordinates on a scrap of paper he had written by hand. He didn't know what was waiting for him on Velterin. Didn't know why Sarai had chosen that place, or why she was hiding from her own kind, but he knew one thing: he was going, even if it meant breaking every law in the quadrant, because she had called. And she had never called for help before. Whatever waited on that moon, Jace would face it, because that's what humans did. They showed up. Even when they were afraid. The Forbidden Moon Veltrin wasn't on any official star charts. Not anymore. JAC, he had to pull out a decades-old archive to find even a mention of it, buried in a forgotten footnote of pre-Union exploration logs. The entry was brief and unsettling. Designated uninhabitable. Classified. Quarantine status due to psychic interference. Avoid at all costs. But now she was there. And she wanted him. He didn't tell the captain. He just waited until the Emberlight docked at a nearby orbital station for fuel and slipped away during cargo loading. No one noticed. No one asked. He rented an old single-pilot shuttle from a scrapyard trader and programmed the coordinates manually, using her encrypted code as a key. The moment he left the safe lanes, everything changed. Stars grew dimmer. Space turned thick. Like moving through syrup. His instruments flickered, static crawling over the screens like frost. Warnings blared, but he ignored them. A voice echoed softly through the speakers, not his systems, but in his mind. A whisper. Closer. The shuttle shook as it entered Veltrin's orbit. The surface looked dead, mountains made of black glass, oceans frozen midwave, and long cracks that glowed with a pale light pulsing like a heartbeat. He landed on a narrow plateau, overlooking a valley filled with ruins, strange towers bent at impossible angles. Old stone arches floated just above the ground, humming like they were alive. He stepped out. The air tasted cold and metallic, yet breathable. His boots crunched over shattered crystals as he walked down a winding path toward the largest structure, a collapsed temple half buried in silver dust. The silence here wasn't empty. It watched. He could feel it. Every step stirred something old. Jace didn't know how long he walked. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. But then he saw her. She stood at the edge of a broken pillar, cloak fluttering behind her in the windless air. Her markings glowed brighter, now more vivid, more powerful. Her hair shimmered like strands of night sky. She turned slowly. His breath caught. She had changed. Not just grown, but become. You came, she said softly. He didn't answer. He just stared. I didn't think you would, she added, voice trembling. They told me you'd forget, that humans don't wait. Jay stepped forward. I didn't wait, he said. I remembered. Her smile was small. Sad. I wasn't allowed to contact you. Not until I chose my path. And now, I've chosen. Chosen what? He asked. Truth, she said. Freedom, rebellion. Something they fear. The ground beneath them rumbled slightly, as if even the moon itself reacted to her words. They're coming for me, she whispered. My people. The elders. The bloodline I left behind. She pulled a small object. From her robe, a shard of crystal humming with energy. This belonged to the mind core, she said. It sees the truth, remembers things no one once remembered. And it chose you, not me, Jace blinked. Me? You fix things, she said, stepping closer. Not just machines, people. Me, even when you didn't understand. You were. The only one who saw me, not what I was born into. She pressed the shard into his hand. It was warm. And it pulsed like a second heartbeat inside him. They can't erase you, she said. Because now you hold it. A low sound echoed. Through the valley deep and sharp like metal bending. Shadows shifted at the edge of the horizon. They're here, Sarai said. How many? She looked at him with glowing eyes. Enough to erase everything. Jace gripped the shard. He should have been terrified, but he wasn't, because she had trusted him. And now the galaxy would learn what it meant to face a human who had something to protect. The ones who came to erase the sky above Veltron began to fracture, not with thunder or fire, but with silence so thick it made the air feel heavier than stone. Jace stood beside Sarai at the edge of the temple ruins, the glowing shard still. Pulsing in his hand like a second heart. Above them, 6 ships pierced the clouds, black, sleek, shaped like spears forged from shadow. Each one bore the emblem of her house-twisting silver runes wrapped around a cold red eye. These weren't scouts. They were executioners. Jace looked at Sarai. We need to run, she shook her head slowly. There's nowhere to run, not on this moon. Then we fight? No, she said, her voice low. We show them. The ground beneath them lit up circles of ancient glyphs spreading outward. From the ruins, triggered by the shard in Jace's hand. The light wasn't just bright. It was alive. The ruins responded to him. Not her. Him. What is this place really? Jace asked, his throat dry. Sarai. I stepped closer. A vault. Before the stars were charted, before the species split, the old ones hid memory in places like this. Memory not just of facts, but of truth. The clouds broke. The ships descended slowly, beams of black energy flickering beneath them. No landing. Gears, no hails. Just a message broadcast through the air like a cold wind. Return the traitor. Or be erased alongside her. Jace didn't move. The shard flared in his palm. Images danced in his mind, visions of ancient wars. Alien queens crowned in sorrow and a silver-eyed child watching planets burn. And then, one final image. Himself. But not here. Not now. In the future. Older. Standing before thousands. And Sarai beside him. They'll try to take it, she said. The shard, you, me, everything. Let them try, he muttered, his voice steady. The ships landed. Figures emerged, tall, armored, emotionless. Their faces hidden behind silver masks. Shaped like the stars, one stepped forward. His voice was calm. Too calm. The human will hand over the shard. Jace stepped in front of Sarai. He won't, she answered for him. He has no claim. The masked figure replied. He has the claim, she said, raising her chin. The shard chose him. A pause. Then the soldiers moved. It happened fast. Too fast. Blurs of black closing in. Jace thought he would be afraid, but the moment the nearest one lunged, the glyphs at his feet exploded with light. A shockwave burst outward, flinging the soldiers back with bone-shaking force. The ruins screamed with Energy. The shard in his hand glowed, brighter, drawing power from the ancient stone beneath them. Then came the voice. Not Sarai's, not his. But the voice of the moon itself, echoing through every rock, every bone, every drop of air. The bearer stands. Jace's knees buckled, but he didn't fall. The light held him. The soldiers hesitated. They had not expected this. We don't need an army, Jace said, breath trembling. We are the memory now, and you can't kill what's remembered. The soldiers paused, unsure. For the first time in generations. The fear was theirs. And somewhere behind their masks, they finally realized the truth. This human wasn't special because of power or blood. He was special because he cared. And sometimes, that was the deadliest force in the galaxy. The heart that wouldn't break. Soldiers didn't charge again. Not right away. They circled, slow and careful, as if they finally understood they stood on sacred ground, not just a forgotten ruin, but a place awake, pulsing with memory far older than their empire. Jace stood at its center. The shard still burned in his hand, but not with fire. It hummed like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him, yet felt more his than anything he had ever known. Sarai stepped beside him. She didn't speak, but her eyes locked with his, and in that silent look, Jace understood something terrifying and beautiful. She had always known this day would come. She had seen it. The soldiers raised their weapons, again long rods of condensed energy, forged to tear through stone and time alike. But as they stepped forward, the glyphs on the ground surged once more. Not just beneath Jace now, but around the entire valley. The ruins began to respond. Pillars that had long stood broken began to lift. Ancient lights crawled across the sky. And the voice of Veltern returned, deeper now, as if it pulled itself from the planet's very bones. The bearer remembers. The traitor stands. And you forgotten ones do not belong. A new wave of energy burst from the ground. Not an attack. Not a weapon. But a memory. And the soldiers were forced to see. They stumbled, one by one, as visions poured into them, visions of peace they had shattered, of promises broken by the very leaders they served, of lives burned to protect a lie. One fell to his knees, hands over his face. Another dropped his weapon, eyes wide with something like grief. The leader shouted, tried to rally them, but his voice was lost beneath the storm of truth washing over the moon. Jace felt it too. He saw glimpses of Sarai's past, her as a child, locked in a temple vault, trained to bow and obey. He saw her running through fire. He saw her watching him from the repair bay on the Emberlight, and he finally understood what she had seen in him. Not strength, not power. Kindness. The kind that didn't expect anything in return. The kind that healed. The kind their empire feared. They want to end this, Sarai said quietly. They'll try to wipe Veltern clean. The memories, the ruins, Yumi, all of it. Let them try, Jace said, staring at the sky. We'll give them something they can't erase. Above, one of the ships began to glow, a weapon charge. It aimed straight for the ruins. The soldiers shouted warnings, realizing their leaders were willing to sacrifice them to erase the past. Sarai raised her hand. A stream of silver light flowed from the shard in Jace's palm, through her, into the sky. It struck the charging ship before the weapon could fire. Not with force, but with memory. The ship stalled. The glow faded, and the weapon died. A voice crackled over Comes, desperate, broken. They've awakened it. Fall back, fall back. Remaining ships fled into the clouds, vanishing like cowards fleeing a ghost. Only silence remained. Jace looked around, breathing hard, dust swirling at his feet. The soldiers left behind had dropped to their knees. Not dead. Not defeated. But changed. Some stared at him. Some stared at her. None raised their weapons again. What now? Jace asked, voice soft. Sarai reached out and placed her hand over his. Now, we rebuild with truth, and if they come again? She smiled, not like before. This time it was deeper, full of something stronger than anger or fear. Then they'll face us. Jace looked at the shard pulsing between their hands. Not a weapon, not a curse, but a reminder. Humans weren't the strongest in the galaxy, or the fastest, or the most advanced, but sometimes in the right moment, they were the ones who remembered what mattered most, and that was more powerful than anything. The memory that livid Veltrin didn't return to sleep. After the battle, the ruins stayed lit soft, steady light glowing beneath the stone. The glyphs didn't fade. The air no longer pulsed with danger, but with something else entirely. Hope. Jace stood at the highest point of the temple ruins, watching the broken skies settle into calm. Sarai sat nearby, fingers tracing the patterns carved into the platform, as if she were reading the planet's heartbeat. Below them, the remaining soldiers, no longer enemies, sat scattered around the valley. Some wept quietly. Others stood in silence, their faces bare now. They had removed their masks. Not one had spoken since the ships fled. They weren't prisoners. They were witnesses. The shard rested in Jace's hand. No longer hot, it pulsed faintly like a sleeping ember. He could feel its weight inside him, not just in muscle and bone, but in memory. Pieces of Veltrin still echoed through him, showing him ancient days, lost voices, forgotten truths. They'll return one day, he said quietly. Yes, Sarah answered, but not tomorrow. And when they do, they won't find us alone? She stood and looked out across the valley. Others had begun to arrive. Not soldiers. Not royalty. But seekers. Pilots, scientists, traders, old priests, and even outlaws, people from every species who had heard the whispers of what happened on Veltrin. Not just that a forgotten moon lit up, not just that a royal heir had gone rogue. But that a human stood in the center of it. Not with power. Not with war. But with heart. And the galaxy needed that now more than ever. They came to learn, to listen, to remember. And Jace? He stayed, not as a warrior, not as a prophet, but as a fixer. A man who repaired what others gave up on. The broken glyphs, the old machines, the hurt in people's eyes, the quiet pain Sarai still carried behind her. Strength. He didn't wear armor, didn't carry weapons. Yet across the stars, they began to speak of him like he was made of something more than flesh. They called him the bearer, the one who held memory. The human who reminded the galaxy that strength didn't always come from power. Sometimes it came from simply refusing to let go. And Sarai? She never left again, not because she couldn't, but because she had found something Number Crown had ever offered her. Home. They rebuilt Veltrin together, not just as a refuge, but as a light, a beacon, for anyone who had been forgotten, silenced, discarded. Jace fixed machines. Sarai fixed history. And together, they fixed belief. One story at a time. And in the quiet between the stars, when the wind curled softly through the stone, Jace could still hear her voice from all those years ago. I'm old enough, human. And now he finally understood. Hadn't been talking about age. She'd been talking about faith. And somehow she had chosen him.